Now I'm going to tell you how to make a simple jig hook by hand. Guys, I'm going to make a red jig using small red hooks. Write in the comments if you've ever seen a jig hook for sale with a red shank. For example, I have never seen one where the fore end itself was red. Now we're going to make a jig hook that resembles a bait. This will be a red jig that is made very quickly, guys, and it's really simple. Here are 2 tiny red hooks. We will also need black and red thread, just regular thread, that we use for sewing, guys. Nail polish is a gel polish that dries only with the help of ultraviolet light. And of course a small ultraviolet flashlight to dry our jig hook. First we take the red thread and unwind a small piece, and now we start to wind it very smoothly and evenly. We wind our thread layer by layer so that everything is done very, very carefully. This is how it turned out, guys. You see, I'm holding the spot where the hook's eye is. Until now, in the round nose pliers, the 2 ends of the thread have been pulled to the side, something like a moth. True. On top of our red thread, so to speak, as a second layer, we begin to wind the black one. You'll need just a little bit of black thread, just enough to create a small head for the bait. Next, we take some glue and apply a small drop. Just a little bit. The beauty of this glue is that it won't dry until we shine this beam of light on it. No matter the temperature, we start shining it and you'll see it drying right before our eyes. This is the miracle that happened. Let's take a picture of it now. And the excess edges, these threads can be simply cut. That is, if the hook is a 4, then making such a beautiful jig is not difficult at all, guys. You see, from the 4th hook, it's very easy to make an ant or a moth, how to put it correctly. I think it turned out really great. The jig looks voluminous, empty inside, very similar to some kind of bloodworm or something. A caterpillar, maybe. Like this. The next homemade product that I want to focus my attention on is, guys, a crossbow. I once told you how to make it, and I want to repeat that. Because last winter I was fishing on this very nod, which I made many fishing trips. Bream was excellent roach. In general, great, guys. The point of the nod is that it compensates for the weight of the jig. If you're fishing with a heavy jig, the fish won't feel it when they take it. And the nod is due to the fact that it has a very long stroke. You see, you can see the entire bite. That is even far from the side. Either you are fishing on the street or in a tent in another region, you will see a bite. The nod stands like this. Ribka lays it out, it rises to the very top. Now I'm going to tell you how to make it, friends. But I think you've understood all the advantages. This is the perfect tackle for catching bream. To make the bobber, we need some steel wire, a fairly stiff rubber band, and some tool to help us bend the bobber comfortably. First of all, we need to take a piece of wire about 30 centimeters long, as I mentioned. We need to straighten out this edge, guys, somewhere in the middle, and make a few bends. The first bend we make is right here, like this. Wow. We have a nice SGBK with 2 bends here. And guys, the width is important. This should be the same as your rubber band, since there are a lot of rubber bands available on the market right now. So guys, take the rubber bands you bought and make it about the width of the band, maybe a little smaller. A little bit more doesn't really matter, just make this bend. I can't tell you how many centimeters that is, because as I said, everyone's rubber bands are different. This is approximately how I got this thing. Now we need to lift this edge. Well, also guys, we take it up a few centimeters like this and lift it up. On one side, we lifted it to the same distance on the other side. So we've made these 2 bends together. After that, we need to make a reverse bend here. So we take it, hold it tightly, then we also leave a few centimeters and bend it in the opposite direction. Our wire, this reverse bend, needs to be pressed tightly here so that it's snug. We do the same on the other side. We take it to the same distance. And we press both on. We're doing a little bit of squeezing like this. Well, this is what we got. I slightly bent it at the bottom. Here, it needs to be attached to our fishing rod. Here's our winter fishing rod, guys, and we need to attach this whole thing here like this using some tape. And we wrap all of this tightly. Once we've secured our setup on the rod, we can easily slide it into the fishing rod. So we end up with this kind of thing. Now we need to take a heat shrink tube with a diameter that allows it to fit in there twice. Here's our rubber band. You see, it fits in there perfectly, just like that twice. The heat shrink tube should be this diameter. And we need to make a small cut in the middle, a slit, so to speak. Carefully we cut this thing. On one side and on the other side, buddy, opposite each other accordingly. Here's our setup, here's our already cut heat shrink tube, and we're threading the rubber band through it twice, as I mentioned. Here's our rubber band threaded through. We put it on one side and the other side of our setup. Now for our setup, we need to use a bobber. The knot can be either metal or Lavsan. It needs to be quite stiff, guys. You shouldn't use one that's too soft. In my case, it's this kind of metal bobber. Now our task is to thread our bobber through this hole that we made so that it fits between the two rubber bands. It has to be right in between them, not on the side, but in between. And it came out on the other side. We need to adjust the bow fishing bobber so that our bobber is in this position. That is, for this we remove one edge of the elastic and simply make several turns. This is how we wind it up and put it back on. So I've just adjusted this tackle. Let's imagine we have a jig under the water. When we're laying it out, the rubber band slightly compensates for the weight of the jig, and the bobber rises. Also, guys, if we went somewhere we had a good layout, we will see this picture. Just when we had the setup, the bobber is just standing there, raised up, and that's thanks to our rubber band. So we come in and we realize that we either need to check the bait or something happened. It has a very large amplitude of oscillation, as you understood. So even a small bite will be very noticeable with such a high leverage, guys. It's really cool. Do you see? It's going to be really cool. If it bites down, we'll see a bite down. If it bites up, then we'll see a bite up. The ideal position of the tip is when it's almost horizontal, but in this case, as it is now like this, and the chest of the jig is very easy to adjust. One turn removed, one turn added, or you can even adjust the length of the knot itself between the rubber bands. You see, it gets higher, then lower, goes down. As you understand, there are only pluses, but there are also minuses. This, guys, is a bulky rig that is not that easy to assemble. You see, the knot will still stick out about 15 centimeters if you pack your fishing box. And guys, the second minus is fishing outside the tent. That is, the gear can get a little tangled outside, and from a strong wind the knot can wag a little on its own if you use a light jig. If you use a heavier jig, then everything will be just great, and the tip performs at 200%. The bomb, or as it's called in other regions, the balda, is a very effective rig, in my opinion. About 90% effective, guys, out of 100. It's just a crazy tackle, in my opinion, the stupidest one. I don't understand why the perch takes it. Everything is done rather primitively, so simply that it would seem that there is nothing for the fish to take here. There is nothing for the fish to take here. But the perch bites quite well and simply loves this thing, and in short, rushes to nothing. Now I'll tell you what you'll need for this rig and how to make it as easily as possible. This is the cheapest and easiest way. Surely there's a woman in your family, whether it's your mom, grandma, or sister who does beadwork. I think everyone can find beads at home. No, you can buy it either at a sewing supply store or at a fishing shop, but it will be more expensive there. We'll need red beads, black beads, and some small tubing like this from wires. Whether it's black, blue, red, or any other color, guys. So we'll need beads. The main bulk of the beads is red. That's right, we need the red color the most. In this rig, the hook you use is very important. It should be small, like for ultralight fishing, and have a wide eye. The wide eye, this little loop, must be there, guys, for sure. So the rig will work more effectively. How is this rig made? It starts with the hook. We take the red beads and fill the shank of the hook with red beads all the way to the edge. And I want to point out right away, pay attention. The beads should move freely on the hook. They shouldn't be tight. They should be able to slide around easily. Now that we've almost filled it completely, on the shank of the hook, we put a black bead at the end. We have created a color that resembles a maggot, and the bead is moving freely with a black bead at the end. Now we secure all of this with our little tubing. It doesn't matter what color it is, blue, red, or black. It doesn't really matter much for you guys at this point, but the main thing is at this stage, the main thing is that your bead moves around. It should have a free range of motion, see? It's moving around for me. Basically, if you've put it on too tightly and there's no room left for the tubing, it shouldn't be that tight. Your tubing should be slightly above the point of the hook, at the same time so that your beads can walk freely. You see, here he is walking freely. He has free movement. It's better to take off one bead than to just squeeze them on tightly. Guys, you need 3 of these hooks with this kind of bead for one rig. 3 hooks and a weight. Now I'm going to tell you how to make a weight for this rig in the simplest and cheapest way possible. For this rig, the easiest way to make a weight is from these. These are, so to speak, sliding weights for summer rigs. Our task now is to take the weight and cut it in half right down the middle using a utility knife. Lead is a pretty soft metal, and a utility knife can handle it easily. It handles it, guys. Yes, it does require some effort, but it's very simple. Now, to make everything look aesthetically pleasing, nice, and to ensure our line doesn't get snagged, we use a file to smooth out all the sharp edges. Once we've adjusted our weight, the next step is to use an awl or another tool to make a hole here. For assembling this rig, I recommend using a line that's about, well, friends, a diameter of, here's a through hole right here. For assembling this rig, I recommend using a line with a diameter of 0.20 to 0.25. It's best if you can use fluorocarbon. It's best if you have the option and can use fluorocarbon. How do we assemble this rig? We take the first hook, making sure the point is facing to the left, and we thread the line through it. We take our weight and thread the line through it. And we thread the second hook with the point facing to the right. Wow! So, we end up with something like this. Here's what it looks like, friends. In short, so this is what we end up with. You see it moves and spins. Now we need to tie a knot here from the edge, leaving about 1 centimeter or so. Here, we tie a little knot. So we have a knot here at a distance of about 3 to 5 centimeters. We cut off this short end. Now we take the third hook, and to it, friends, we tie the same fishing line, the same diameter as on the main tackle. Guys, now comes the important part. We need to tie the third hook, this one, with a leash, so that the length of this leash is 5-10 centimeters, no more than 10 centimeters. At the same time, so that when we lowered it, but it didn't catch on. You see this knot? That is, at this height it needs to be attached. But that's it. The super catchy bomb tackle is ready. I don't know, guys, why it's called bomb. Most likely when it hits the bottom, it stirs up the silt, which attracts perch, surprisingly to all the fishermen. This top hook is the most effective one. Anyone who makes this rig using my method, guys, will definitely not regret it. Also, let me know. Thanks. I'm telling you seriously, a leash. This one is definitely going to smash the perch. Here we have 2 floats for winter fishing. They seem to be okay, universal floats, but when the fish are sluggish or not biting consistently, it's not always easy to see the bite. Now we're going to upgrade these floats. For this, we take a small piece of wire. We make a little loop on it, and around this loop we wrap some loops around it. Now we take the second piece of wire, thread it through the loop, and make exactly the same kind of loop. Just with your hands, guys. So to speak, a loop within a loop should be formed. Now, we take our float and stick one loop into it from above, tightly with the eye, and from above. The second float is already on the reverse side, loop into loop. And we will get it, guys, when we tightly connect all this now. This is the kind of float we can make. We need to glue this part down so it doesn't come apart using super glue. For example, I will carefully use UV gel polish in the same way, with a flashlight and gel polish. The main thing is not to glue the rings together so that they can move freely. So, what's the beauty of this float? Guys, this is what it looks like. At the bottom, there's a shot. Below that will be the hook, and the float itself is a double one. We're now submerging it in our jar. And it's in the hole, just like this in our setup. So, this is our little hole we've got here. And it should be about a few centimeters, as we can see. 5. They don't reach the surface of the water. Are you going to observe all of this from above? Like this? This is how you see your float. In the hole, when you have a bite is happening. Since a bite is happening, when a bite happens, the float either sways from side to side. This is how it will look in reality. See, there it is, a little wobble. And with this double float, it's easier to see even the slightest bite. It's very sensitive. When the fish is pulling, you won't just see a rise, there will be a rise, and the top float will go down. So, you definitely won't miss such a bite underwater. There it is, it wobbles, and when it pulls, you see, it just drops down immediately. The next, simplest yet really cool and effective DIY project is a bobber for ice fishing. Guys, we know that there are a lot of nods, different ones, different qualities, different thicknesses, but the simplest bobber you can make at home is from a car tie-down strap. There will be a lot of other bobbers that I will make, but the simplest and the most, as of today, a good bobber is made from a car tie-down strap. It's pretty easy to make it, literally, I don't know, in just a few seconds. For those who don't know, this is what the tie-down straps look like. They come in a package like this, and there are a ton of them in there. Tie-down straps come in different colors and sizes, guys. They're always useful at home. They will come in handy for household tasks. So, in my case, I have black straps and a white strap. I think that such a white strap will blend in with the snow. And for the bobber, but it won't work very well. You'll also have to paint it with varnish so that it contrasts a bit. And the black strap will be just what we need. It's just a little thinner for me, and now we're going to make a bobber from this strap. Here I have an ice fishing rod and a regular tie-down strap. I guys love long bobbers. They can be adjusted. And with a long bobber, even the slightest nibble, like from a light jig, bends it. When you pull it, it will be much more visible. We just take this edge of the strap and cut it off. We managed to make a bobber in just a few seconds, guys. Here he is, our beauty. Now we just take the ice fishing rod and you push our little bobber into this rubber band here. Well, that's it. Almost everything is ready. We just need to make a small hole right here at the edge of the tip. To thread a fishing line through it, you can do this using the same awl, needle, or some other hot object. Again, if you want, you can paint it green or red nail polish so that the tip is really visible. I just made a small hole, just the diameter of the fishing line. It will fit perfectly.